Virginia Gazette, 1848. Runaway about the 20th October last. Will, 5 feet 8 inches high, middling black, well made, and Peter, 5 feet 9 inches. Has a wife at Littletown. Reward offered to any person who will kill the said Negroes and bring me their heads.
$200 reward. Run away from the subscriber.
$200 reward.
Run away.
Run away from the subscriber. Negro slave.
Runaway slaves from
I have heard that so many slaves escaped into freedom along a route that could not be ascertained, that the slave owners said there must be an underground railroad under the Ohio River and on to the north. Colonel William Cochrane, abolitionist, 1854.
When you hear the words Underground Railroad, do you imagine a train rolling north along underground rails? Do you see poor, shivering slaves being led through trapdoors and dark tunnels? Well, if that is what you see the myth. Because the real Underground Railroad was neither underground, nor was it a railroad. Instead, Underground Railroad is a symbolic name for the 200-year-long struggle to break free from slavery in America. And it includes every slave who tried to escape and every free person who helped them along the way.
The Underground Railroad was, in this country, the first civil rights movement. It was the first time in a major way that blacks and whites came together toward a common goal. They showed tremendous courage, they showed cooperation, and most importantly, they showed what was important to this country, the quest for freedom.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom.
As Americans, we want to think of ourselves as really priding ourselves on personal freedom and priding ourselves on being willing to help other people achieve freedom. And so the Underground Railroad in that regard becomes the all-American story, the story of those who refuse to accept slavery and those who refuse to accept the denial of other people's freedom.
Some of the conductors on this so-called freedom train would become famous. Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Henry David Thoreau, and Harriet Beecher Stowe were all dedicated and celebrated champions of freedom. But for every well-known worker along the line, there were thousands more whose names are lost to history. Men and women who dedicated themselves to providing a sanctuary for enslaved Africans and worked without fanfare for one of the most important reform movements in American history.
The mythology of the Underground Railroad revolves around notions that there were really organized groups of people, mainly white, who either went into the South themselves or in some way reached into the South to help runaways into freedom in the North. As in all myths, some of that's true. But the fact of life is that the average escapee started the journey on his or her own and were helped along the way in all kinds of unexpected ways, mainly by strangers. Think about the difficulty of making an escape. I mean, if you're a fugitive slave, there are no maps that you can use. Your knowledge of areas outside the plantation, generally not very great. There is danger at every turn. And of course, you didn't want to fail, because the consequences of failing could be unthinkable. It was especially difficult for women to make this decision. After all, women, having charge of the children, had additional burden. I mean, it doesn't take great imagination to understand how difficult it is to try to escape with an infant.
She felt that she had rather be drowned than to be captured and separated from her child. And nerved with a strength such as God gives only to the desperate, with one wild cry and flying leap, she vaulted over the turbid current, by the shore onto the raft of ice beyond. 1,000 lives seemed to be concentrated in that one moment to Eliza. Uncle Tom's Cabin, 1852.
No one knows for certain, but it is believed that one way or another, as many as 100,000 slaves traveled the invisible rails of the Underground Railroad. Many made it to freedom. Most did not. But the probability of recapture or even death was a risk they were willing to take. Because for as long as there was slavery, there were men and women who tried to escape. The seeds of the Underground Railroad were sown in 1526, when Spanish settlers brought the first indentured servants from Africa to the North American mainland, at what would become Sapelo Sound, Georgia. In 1619, 100 Africans were shipped to Jamestown. Only 20 survived the trip to serve in the brand new British colony called Virginia. And as a new nation was born, so too was a thriving slave trade.
When the Western Hemisphere was colonized, it was colonized as a place where staple crops would be grown on huge estates with a stable labor force. Now, for stable, you can read slave labor force, a labor force that was not going to be able to go off and get their own farm and start up. So, although slavery had existed on all continents in one form or another, it now became a major business.
Negroes for sale, a cargo of very fine, stout men and women in good order and fit for immediate service. Conditions are 1/2 cash or produce, the other half due January next.
Plantation owners deeply believed that slavery was an economic necessity, and that the slave trade was its human stock market. Unconditional submission was the enslaved African's fate. To disobey or run away was to sign your own death warrant.
We teach them they are slaves, and to the white face belongs control, and to the black obedience. Plantation owner, 1820.
How I hated slavery, as it fettered me and beat me and baffled me in my desires. In my period of despair, it gave me the power to hate. But in the end, it also gave me the will and the courage to conquer or die. John P. Parker, former slave, 1845.
Don't forget that slavery, theoretically, in its purest form, is absolute power of one person over another person. I don't have to tell you what horrible possibilities that conjures up.
Yeah. The most upsetting news just channeled through my ear canal. I want peace, but on these streets these niggas is wild. They said it was foul, but merch the house wearing no smiles. I need some real answers. I'm thinking, who can I dial in my mind? Review the profile of a man with a precise plot plan. If it's to grip it, it gets the job done. Only call up one. I'm the storm after the calm. A ticking time bomb and as deadly as wearing red on 83rd and Avalon. Or reading Psalms in the heart of Babylon. I spray your ass with napalm like I'm still in Vietnam. A phenomenon with the reach of Elijah Wan and the grip of a python, hotter than sand in Tucson. Get bombed. That's right, y'all. I'm in beautiful Chicago. I'm on the bridge right here on Wabash Avenue. And I'm bringing you guys another episode of Intertwined. I hope you guys are enjoying what's going on because we got something very special for you. And you're going to see some never before seen footage from the Black Panthers coming up. All right, y'all. Get back. I'm the storm after the calm. A ticking time bombing as deadly as wearing red on 83rd and Avalon. Or reading Psalms in the heart of Babylon. I spray your ass with napalm like I'm still in Vietnam. A phenomenon with the reach of Elijah Wan and the grip of a python, hotter than sand in Tucson. Get bombed, surrender.